Year 1, I thought we could read some more of our book, The Magic Faraway Tree Collections. We're reading the very first book in the series, and it's the Enchanted Wood. We are on chapter 28. The Red Goblins Get a Shock. It seemed a long time before anything happened. Then Moonface pricked up his ears and listened. "Someone's coming up the slippery slip," he said. "It must be the little squirrel." "Oh, I hope it isn't the goblin," said Franny, looking rather scared. But it was the red squirrel. He hopped out of the slippery slip hole and nodded at everyone. "It's all right," he said. "The elves are coming. I found Mr. Whiskers and he has slipped out to fetch all his family. There are 51 of them." "We'd better let the rope down then," said Moonface, and he let it slither down the slide. Someone caught hold of it at the other end and the rope tightened. "There's an elf there now," said Moonface, and he and Joe hauled on the rope. It was heavy. They pulled and they pulled, panting hard. "Oh, this elf is rather heavy," said Joe, and no wonder, for when they at last got the rope to the top, there was not one elf, but 5 hanging onto the rope. They leapt into Moonface's tiny round room and began to whisper excitedly. Moonface told them all about the goblins, and they grinned when they all heard his plan. Down went the rope again, and this time 6 elves came up on it. By this time the room was very crowded, but nobody minded. "We'll have to sit on each other's knee," said Joe, and giggled at the sight of so many people in Moonface's little tree room. The elves all looked exactly the same. They all had very long beards, though Mr. Whiskers' beard was the longest. It reached right down to his toes. The rope fetched up all the 51 little men, and by that time there was really no room to move. Everyone was excited, and there was such a lot of whispering that it sounded like 1,000 leaves rustling at once. "Now I'm going to bang on the inside of my door and tell the goblins I will let them know the magic spell they want," said Moonface. "As soon as they open the door, you must all rush out and grab hold of them." "Wait! I've thought of such a good idea," said Joe suddenly. "Let's push them into this room of Moonface's and send someone down the tree to bolt the trapdoor, and when they slide down, thinking to escape, they'll all be nicely boxed up in the slide until we decide to open the trapdoor." "Oh, that is a good idea," said Mr. Whiskers. "2 elves had better go up the ladder that leads through the clouds to stop any goblins trying to escape that way, and 6 of us had better slide down to the foot of the tree to stop them escaping into the wood." 6 of the elves at once took cushions and slid down the slippery slip. They shot out of the trapdoor and bolted it on the outside. They surrounded the foot of the tree, ready to prevent any naughty goblins from escaping. The rest of them waited for Moonface to speak to the goblins outside. They were all tremendously excited. Moonface banged on the inside of his door. A goblin outside shouted to him, "Stop that noise!" "Let me out!" yelled Moonface. "Not till you tell us one of the magic spells you know," said the goblins. "I know a spell that will turn people into kings and queens," shouted Moonface. "Tell us it then," said the goblin at once. "Well, open my door," said Moonface. There came the sound of a key turned in a padlock, and then Moonface's door was opened. At once the whole crowd of elves poured out like a stream of water. Joe, Beth and Franny went out with them, and when the goblins saw the crowd, they gave a yell and leapt down the tree to warn their friends. 2 elves leapt up to the ladder and sat there to prevent any goblins escaping to the land above. Joe, Moonface, Beth and Franny climbed quickly down the tree to let out all the people locked in their homes. How glad everyone was! Dame Washerlot was very angry at being locked in. "Oh, I'll teach those goblins to lock me in," she shouted, and the old dame picked up her washtub and began to throw water over all the goblins climbing up the tree. What a shock for them! Joe couldn't help laughing. He unlocked Mr. What's-his-name door he unlocked Mr. What's-his-name's door, and out came What's-his-name, shouting and raging, followed by the saucepan man. What's-his-name chased hard after the terrified goblins. The saucepan man acted in a surprising manner. He took off one saucepan after the other, one kettle after the other, and threw them after the escaping goblins. Crash! Bang! Clatter! They let out the barn owl and the 3 owls that lived together. They flew at the goblins, screeching and hooting. The angry pixie was so angry that he flew at Joe when he let him out, and Joe only had just explained in time that it was the goblins who were to blame, not him. Beth let Silky out, but Silky was frightened by all the noise and shouting. Still, she managed to catch one goblin by throwing one of her curtains over him. Silky and Beth then took the goblin up the tree and pushed him into Moonface's room. When he found the slippery slip, he slid down it in delight, thinking he could escape. But, alas for him, he stopped at the bolted trapdoor, and there he stayed, and unable to climb up or get out. Many other goblins were caught that way too. They tried to escape from the elves by running down the tree to the wood, but when they found 6 strong elves at the foot, they climbed up the tree again to escape to their own land at the top. And then, of course, they found the 2 elves on the ladder, who pushed them back down again. So into Moonface's house they went, pushed in by Joe, who took great delight in doing so. One by one they tried to escape by sliding down the slippery slip, and soon the slide was crowded with goblins, piled one on top of the other. Dawn came and the sun shone out, lighting up the great branches of the enormous faraway tree. Now we can see if any goblins are hiding anywhere, called Moonface, who was thoroughly enjoying himself. So he and the elves and what's-his-name looked into every hole and corner, behind every branch and tuft of leaf, and pulled out any goblins hidden there. They were marched up to Moonface's room, and down the slippery slip they went. Soon there wasn't a single goblin left. They were all piled on top of one another in the slide, most uncomfortable and upset. There, said Moonface at last, pleased with himself and everyone else. We've got them all safe. My word, I am hungry. What about having a good meal? Look, called Silky, waving to a lower part of the great tree. The faraway tree is growing ripe plums just down there. What about having a feast on those? Oh, good, said Moonface. Squirrel, go down to the 6 elves at the foot of the tree and tell them that they can come up now. Hey, you 2 elves on the ladder, you can come down. Silky, can you make us some hot chocolate to drink? Plums and hot chocolate would make a lovely meal. Just as they were sitting down to eat and drink, a strange figure came up the tree. He was thin and ragged and knobbly, but his face beamed as if he knew everyone. Who's that? Said Franny at once. I don't know, said Moonface, staring. I seem to have seen his face before, said Beth. Oh, he's a funny-looking creature, said Joe. He looks rather like a scarecrow to me. Oh, do you know who it is, Year 1? I have a feeling. Who do you think it might be? Because do you remember one of the characters was taking off their pots and pans and throwing it at everyone? So who do you think might be coming up the tree? The ragged man came up and sat down on a branch nearby. He held out his hand for a cup of hot chocolate. Who are you? Said Moonface. What's your name? Asked Silky. Play a game? Said the thin little man, beaming. Oh, yes, certainly. What game shall we play? And then everybody knew who it was. It was the old saucepan man without his kettles and saucepans. He'd thrown them all over the goblins, and now he had none left to wear. Oh, Saucepan, you do look different, said What's-his-name, hugging him. I didn't know you. Come and have a plum. The Saucepan man looked alarmed. Hurt your thumb? He said. Oh, I am sorry. No, I didn't say I'd hurt my thumb, said What's-his-name, roaring with laughter and clapping Saucepan on the back. I said have a plum, a plum, a plum. Oh, thanks, said Saucepan man, and he put 2 large plum in his mouth at once. And now, said Moonface, when everyone had finished, what about those goblins in the slippery slip? That's the end. Chapter 29, The Punishment of the Red Goblins. Ooh, have a little think. What do you think's going to happen? All these goblins now are stuck in the slippery slip. What on earth are they going to do about these goblins?